Today we have with us Laura and Josh Hattan of the Great Outdoor Shop here in Pinedale, Wyoming. So, what exactly do you guys do at your shop? What services do you do for everybody, and what do you have at the shop?
Sure. So we are a fully stocked outdoor shop. So we cater to pretty much anything that people will come to the winds to experience, from backpacking and rock climbing to fly fishing, spin fishing, day hiking. We do cater to some hunters in the fall and also skiers and snowboarders in the winter.
Awesome. Okay. What made you choose to settle in this region and cater to these Wind River outdoor enthusiasts?
Our history goes back to growing up in the Midwest, and shortly after college really started getting into the mountains, outdoors, backpacking and rock climbing. And where we were had no opportunities for either of those activities, so we found ourselves making frequent trips to Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, to go play in the mountains. And as birth of our daughter drew near, it became time, we thought, to make a move closer to the things that we loved and activities. So.
And definitely, wanted her to experience, an authentic outdoor American childhood. I grew up in the country and, had like a 5-mile radius from home where I could play and just be out in nature. And more and more you hear less about kids' exposure to that. And so we really wanted her to know what it was like to live outside and have that experience growing up.
Great. I guess, what do you think motivates other people to come to this region of Wyoming and delve into the wild and rugged Wind River Mountains? I mean, it's not necessarily an easy task. What gets them out there?
Well, I think that there is, that we certainly aren't unique in wanting, to harbor those experiences for our family. I do think that as people are getting older, especially the millennial generation, they're realizing that those things that their parents made them do as kids, like go camping or go on hikes, were actually pretty cool pieces of their childhood that they look back on, and they are trying to get back into those experiences and try and have a little more reality in day to day instead of just sitting in a cubicle, sitting behind a desk. And adventure is something that is never going to go away. People's quest for an authentic personal adventure, whether that's backpacking or even just armchair alpinism, where they're reading about these adventures. I think just going into the mountains gives people a real personal experience, and they can cater that to however adventurous they want to be.
And speaking to this area specifically, what sets the Wind River Range apart from a lot of different places, the Tetons, the Rockies through Colorado, is the remote nature of our mountains, the lack of population base, and the ability to go out and truly have a secluded, quiet experience, and a very wild experience. So some of those places, national parks and others, everything has been really almost padded, making a safe experience, safe backcountry experience, whereas here it is more authentic and raw. You can get yourself into trouble, but you can also go out and experience nature uninhibited.
Well, you guys have helped make history here in Pinedale. You helped Pinedale become the first gateway community in Wyoming for the Continental Divide Trail. Could you tell us a little bit more about this?
Sure. So the Wind River Range has approximately 140 miles of the Continental Divide Trail. It runs the full length of the winds, and from a thru hiker's perspective, it's generally one of the favorite sections of the entire 3,100 mile CDT hike. And so we partnered with the Continental Divide Trail Alliance to really promote this area to those hikers, but also to put it on the map as a premier backpacking destination. The people that live in Pinedale really are favored by what we have at our disposal in our backyard. You know, we have 140 miles of the most scenic trail in the United States, and people come from all over the world to experience that. And so we really wanted to put it on the map and show people that, you know, this is a valid area, that people come here for a specific reason, that they are coming here to experience what we get to see every single day. And that we wanted to make sure that people understood that that it is a major destination for that reason.
Now, not only have you made history, but do you find that any of the 1800s fur trade history has affected your perception of this area or how you've advised your customers?
You know, I do. I think it's kind of interesting. As Josh mentioned, the Wind River Range is still very wild. We have over 400,000 acres of federally designated wilderness back there, and so it is kind of humbling, especially now with all of the equipment and things that we do think of as necessities for backpacking, being prepared, being safe. Really, when you compare this lifestyle to what the mountain men experienced, it is a luxury. We are so equipped for the elements out there in a way that they just, you know, were not. They still were able to survive. They still were able to thrive back there and live back there. And so I think being out there in the true wilderness and experiencing the mountains in a very similar way to what they experienced is actually pretty humbling.
Yeah, you gain some real appreciation for how hardy and how hard they had to work just to exist on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Do you think it's important for modern hikers and backpackers and climbers to understand and learn this history for their own experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. It pulls the whole experience into a different scope, and knowing the history of a specific region as you're there experiencing it, knowing how it was discovered, popularized, from everything from the mountain man history to the mountaineering and climbing history as well, really does broaden the appreciation for.
Absolutely. And yeah, when you're back there in some of these huge, you know, glacial valleys and cirques, you know, it really is, when you're sitting there, it's kind of like you're witnessing time. And, you know, things change and our lives change and every day is different. But when you're in the mountains, you do kind of feel that timelessness of it all. You're sitting there and you're thinking, you know, yes, John C. Fremont was here as well and saw this exact same thing that I saw. You know, it gives a really defined perspective to, I guess, how fickle everyday experiences can be, and it kind of drops some perspective on you for sure.
Now, you mentioned gear, how our gear today is a lot different than back then. Maybe you could share some of the gear that you recommend to your customers and talk a little bit about safety and security in the mountains.
Yeah.
Sure. One of the things about the Wind River Range is it's high elevation, and so the weather can change pretty drastically. You know, you can literally go from a bluebird sky day to a blizzard in a matter of hours. And so a lot of the equipment that we recommend people carry with them, you know, are preparedness items for, you know, a drastic change in weather. And so over the years, obviously there have been a lot of changes between, you know, wearing furs, you know, to survive the colder temperatures, into moving to something more natural, or another natural material like down, for instance, which has a much higher warmth to weight ratio. So you get the same amount of warmth as they probably would be getting from, you know, buffalo hide, but it's a lot lighter weight. It's a lot easier to carry around. What I do recommend for folks is like a down sleeping bag, for instance. You know, something like this, which does keep you really warm at night, but also since it's a natural material, it tends to give you a greater radius for warmth. You're usually good about 10 to 15 degrees on whatever a bag is rated. If it's down, that you'll be comfortable at, so you won't get too hot, but it will also still keep you warm.
Right, and this is really light. I mean,
Yes.
not,
Yeah, this is
nothing
About-
to it.
yeah, and
Less
so
than 2 pounds, and it keeps you warm down to 10 degrees.
yep, and so easy to carry around. If you were to compare this with something that they would have used during the Mountain Man era, you're probably talking about a fifth of the weight at least. Then, as well as that, there are also different base layers that people can wear to get better performance, whether it's wool or synthetic. Generally, cotton is not something that's recommended. Mountain Men surely would have had the opportunity to utilize wool. Companies like Smart Wool do make base layer apparel, and the benefit of wool is that it's temperature regulating. So even if it is wet from sweat or rain or snow, it will still regulate your body temperature. It'll still keep you warm. And then there's also things like a synthetic base layer, like this piece from Under Armour, which uses a polyester fleece. And what that does, fleece is a very good retainer of warmth. And so it kind of is waffled like a traditional thermal top would be. But since little pockets of fleece, it tends to trap in body heat really well. And so this is actually an extremely warm piece for as thin and lightweight as it is.
Amazing.
And then the other thing that we recommend people carry every single time they go out is a rain jacket and rain pants.
Is that just for the Wind Rivers or just in general?
Just in general, I think anybody that's doing anything in the mountains should really be prepared for the fact that mountains create weather, and if you're up high enough, rain turns to snow pretty quickly. And even if it's not precipitating, the wind can be really intense above tree line, and so it's nice to have something that will block the wind and keep your core warm, prevent hypothermia. So we did bring a rain jacket. This is an ultralight piece from Marmot. It is completely wind and waterproof, and it actually stuffs into its little pocket.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, things like that, just really basic things anymore that people pretty much assume that they're going to need to have with them. But, when you are going into the backcountry, you need to remember that you're living out there. This is not like a day hike and then you're going to go to your hotel room and, hang out in your soft, cozy bed. It's something that you need to be prepared for every moment of your life out there.
Right, and even if you were going for a day hike, having those things are important too, because you never know, you might get stuck out there or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So,
on the whole, the requirements haven't changed since the Mountain Man days. You still need to have shelter and food to survive, and what has changed is technology and the ability to give yourself the things you need to survive on a much lighter, smaller scale, more portable, and so a person's range is a little bit greater. The amount of area they can cover in a day seems to have increased, but those basics for survival are still the same.
now what are the recommendations today for dealing with larger wildlife such as bears?
So most folks are carrying bear spray now as a personal protectant against predators. There are a few people that will carry firearms, but on the whole, the general recommendation is a can of bear spray is your best defense against those predators.
Okay, and why bear spray versus a firearm?
The bear spray is going to create a larger cloud, so it's going to cover a broader area. And in the heat of a moment, when you've got a bear charging down on you, the ability to aim is not probably what it should be. And so if you're shooting a handgun, it's tough to put a bullet where it needs to stop a bear, whereas a large cloud of pepper spray is more effective at reaching the target.
So, I know your store attracts a wide variety of customers, everything from beginner outdoor enthusiasts to expert mountaineers. I'm sure you've met a wide variety of characters. Is there any one story that you'd be willing to share with us about a customer that was super memorable?
Well, in recent history, movies like Into the Wild or Wild, or Bill Bryson's A Walk in the Woods have really kind of romanticized the idea of being in the mountains, and some people do take that to extremes without being prepared. In particular, we had a young gentleman from the city come out after Into the Wild because he wanted to live off the land in the winds, and he'd never been camping before, and it's puts you in a difficult position where you see someone that's unprepared for what they're going to face out there, and you try and help them out as much as you can without making it sound like they can't do something. You're still trying to be supportive and make sure they have a positive experience, but at the same time you're trying to lessen the liability for them out there, I guess. And this particular young man didn't quite make it more than a couple days, but
he showed up. So he didn't have a car. He came in via public transportation. Hadn't done a whole lot of homework as to where he was going to go live off the land, but ended up at Elkhart Park, where there's not a whole lot of opportunity for water close by, and showed up with a giant gunny sack duffel bag, not a backpack, not anything that was very portable. And so the idea of him making it someplace where he could catch fish to eat, or find plants and water, but not have the mobility to do so, really affected his success in his endeavor. Yeah.
So did you get to see him again at the end? Did he come through your shop, or?
He did stop by and was pretty humbled by the reality of being out in nature and what you truly need to do to live off the land to survive. Modern backpacking has made it really easy to go out for days on end with all of the utilities and food to survive, carry it all with you. But the fact of the matter is, to go in with none of that and survive on your own is much more difficult than people give credit to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we also had this really cute couple come in from Chicago once on their honeymoon, and they had never been backpacking before, and this was going to be their first trip, and they were so excited and full of love, and they came out after about 2 days as well, and came in the shop, and we were like, "What happened? You're supposed to be out there for a week," and they said, "There's nothing back there." It is interesting to have folks come out and have that experience and realize that it's not easy. Everyone starts somewhere, though, and so it's nice to see people like that come back and give it another try, and understand that they need to actually do some research, they need to do some preparation to be back there. But when you hear things like that or see people have that experience, you kind of wonder what they anticipated it would be like versus what they actually got. But
doing your homework sounds like is important.
Very important.
Absolutely.
Talking to people.
Absolutely. And, we have the ability now to do all of this research. When you think about the mountain men, this was all new. They experienced these things and learned lessons from them, and that's how they were able to survive. It's actually pretty easy for us to hop on the internet and find out all of the information we need to, or come into a shop and ask questions. So comparatively, even that has become a lot easier.
So, you guys have spent countless hours yourselves backpacking, of course, and with your daughter, Sierra. What's it like backpacking with a child and now almost teenager?
It's awesome, actually. Sierra spent her first night in a tent when she was 13 days old. She spent her first snowy night in a tent at 6 weeks. And so she's always been with us. It's always been a part of her life. And, one thing that we do get a lot in the store is people saying, well, can my kid do that? I want to go summit Fremont Peak. Can my kid do that? And, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know their kid. I don't know what they're capable of. I know what my kid can do. And what I really try to impress upon people is, just try it. That's the point of being out there is to try and have an experience rather than only doing it because you know that they're going to win, only doing it because you know they're going to succeed. And if they fail, it's like the whole trip is ruined. That's not the point. The point is, to encourage kids to be out there and find out the things that they can do. And it's a confidence booster for them. It's a strengthening thing. And kids are built to be outside. Every part of it is awesome to take a kid out there. Maybe you're not going to make as many miles in a day as you had hoped, but hey, you're going to look at every single rock that you pass, and you're going to look at every single tree that you pass, and every single bug that you pass, and it actually does make you, as a calloused adult who thinks rocks and trees might be boring parts of the hike, it makes you pay more attention to those things and kind of see them with new eyes and appreciate them better. It's awesome to take a kid out there.
Great. So my last question for you, do you guys have any wild story from your own adventures out in the mountains, either good or bad?
The most memorable experience for me was going in to climb Wolf's Head about 6 or 7 years ago. And we went in as a party of 3. Weather forecast looked pretty good, but if you look at the Cirque of Towers on a map and predominant weather patterns, you see that most of the weather comes from the backside of Wolf's Head. And so you don't really have a good gauge of what's going on to the west of you until the weather's on top of you. And that's what happened to us. We were within the first 4 pitches of that route, and it's about an 800-foot climb, maybe more, pretty big. And we got pinned down by a little weather system, and we happened to be in a little nook on the side of the mountain, so it wasn't too bad. We hunkered down for about 30 minutes, and that weather rolled over the top of us, and wasn't too bad. And we looked out, and bright and sunny, and well, why turn around? Let's keep on going. And we got another 2/3 of the way up the mountain, and then the real storm hit, and things started to get really interesting at that point. Culminating with, in the way that mountain is shaped, you're running up a ridge, kind of a hogsback ridge on that peak, and sheer 2,000-foot drop on either side, and the route goes up the ridge and then starts winding through gendarmes along the ridge top. And once you get to beyond that halfway point, it's actually faster to descend that mountain by finishing going up the top and then taking an easier descent path down the other side versus doing big, involved, and dangerous rappels on either side of the peak. And so on our second to last pitch, the lightning was raining down pretty heavily, and I was sitting on the rock, belaying my partner Chris as he was leading that pitch, and lightning actually struck the mountain, and I felt a ground shock from, we're probably 200 feet below the summit at that point. Felt the ground shock sitting on the rock from where we were. And we just had to keep on pushing up to the summit in spite of the lightning that was coming down. And so we got up to the summit, and rigged our rappels. Obviously no summit photos. It was just go, go, go. And as we were rigging rappels, you could hear the moss and lichen crackling up there.
Oh, wow.
And lightning hitting on all sides. And we got off the top as quick as we could, made our rappels, and about second rappel, the storm was gone. It moved through already, and have a really cool picture looking down the Shadow Lake Valley of a snowstorm that followed it in the latter part of July.
Wow.
Up there. But pretty memorable experience, and one of those that could have gone the wrong way really easily, but didn't.
That's very fortunate. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's great.
Feel free to visit Laura and Josh at the Great Outdoor Shop in downtown Pinedale, Wyoming.